Tonight we invite you to join us on a part 2 journey of an episode that's kind of evolved as we started it. This was given to us by Aleda Weirs, Bill Weirs' wife that's sitting across from me here, my cohort in crime. It started off as things we're supposed to be afraid of, and then it's kind of evolved into things that to be afraid of, things we fear, even as an adult. Bill kind of took it down the adult phase of today of kind of as we have evolved ourselves, things that we are afraid of today. Regardless, it was a very interesting episode that we started, and we quickly realized we had a lot more to talk about. So we are coming back tonight with part 2 of that evolving story, and we hope that you'll set in and enjoy it as much as we have.
From a child born into this world, we are taught what to believe. Closed-minded we become, fearful to be deceived. Still we desire to know what lies beyond that locked door. The art of the storyteller, conjuring tales of legend and lore. History hidden, lost knowledge, things forgotten and the unknown. These are the things that direct us and will set the tone. Welcome, friends, to another episode of Nightmares on the Lost Highway.
Well, I'm going to kick off right off the bat more of my bullet points, which I started with from growing up mostly in the 80s, and we had talked about that on the former part 1 podcast of this. It seems like the 80s was just that perfect time where media was capturing a lot of the information. We weren't necessarily getting full truths. Things someone in town would tell our grandparents, and our grandparents would bestow to us, or grandparents would tell our parents. And one of those has to be, Bill, if you're going to go swimming, don't eat and go swimming within 30 minutes of each other.
Me and my wife were literally talking about this just the other day. In relation to this particular, she was talking to a friend of hers, and it was talking about this episode, or part 1 of this episode. And so we were talking about that, and I was like, I never stressed that with the kids because, like,
I don't think it's even a real thing.
No,
there's no scientific.
Medically speaking, there's no weight to it.
But I think the rumor was you'd get leg cramps.
You would get cramps,
and you wouldn't be able to paddle,
swim,
so you would drown. So if you ate, you had to wait. I think the magic number was 30 minutes. I'm not sure where that came from.
No, it was an hour. You had to wait an hour.
Oh, an hour? Okay. But yeah, and I remember my parents. My parents were that way. It's too early. You can't get in the water yet. And it's like.
Yeah, they would count down too, man. Like it had to be an hour. Yeah. And my grandparents were worse about it. My mom was kind of like, it's been like 40 minutes.
Yeah, it's close enough.
Which, if my mom believed in it, was kind of a, like, yes, maybe he'll drown. Who cares?
He'll probably be all right.
But no, my grandparents were definitely the ones. And then, years and years later, once I was an adult and had kids, I read somewhere that it's 100% BS.
Yeah, fake.
Like, there's no truth to that whatsoever.
Another one we've got to talk about is razor blades and Halloween candy.
We already talked about that, though. We did that in, like, our first Halloween episode.
Yeah. Was that ever really a thing?
I want to say there's never been a documented case of it, according to what I did for that episode. Because I looked that up, like the tainted candy, because you have to check your candy, right? Even when my kids would trick or treat, the idea was they couldn't eat anything until we looked at it.
Mine it had to be in a wrapper.
You could go to the police department and they would x-ray it or whatever.
Oh, yeah, I remember that too. Yeah.
Or no, the hospital maybe.
Free x-rays for your candy tonight. Yeah.
But if I remember correctly, I don't think there's ever been a documented case of that either. It may be like the poisoned candy, where like there was one time it did happen, but the guy poisoned his own kids for the insurance. It wasn't something that people were just handing it out.
Well, I will say this is one that struck a real fear with me, because not that I ate a lot of apples, but we did, you don't even dream of this today, bobbing for apples.
Well, I mean, you could do it if you were
if you put bleach water maybe in it, but with all the stuff
it wasn't
around,
anything. Like, I never did that just because I didn't like the idea of it. It just looked stupid.
Oh, it was fun, though. You get your head totally under there trying to get the
Not
apple
trying to be
pegged to the
judgmental
bottom.
or anything, Eric.
But there was this fear that you're going to bite into this apple. And imagine a razor blade inside. It would just slice your tongue, slice the top of your mouth. Oh, I think that was created by parents of basically what we call today candy tax. Kids, you got to let us inspect the candy first. Oh, here's a Baby Ruth. Yep, that one's going to me. There's a Hershey's with
That
almonds.
one doesn't look safe.
Yeah, that one doesn't look safe, little Timmy. So I think that's maybe where that came from. And then one of the things I think that we may have started to touch on in episode 1, and that is the emergency broadcast network interruptions.
I don't know if we talked about that or not.
You remember those while you're watching your favorite
Yeah.
TV show? One, it just kind of piss you off. You're watching the Dukes of Hazzard or something. And
Well-
and
And it's escalated now to where it comes across on your phone.
oh yeah,
And I've been like in a theater when one of those would go off, and it was like for an Amber Alert.
Yeah.
Which, no offense, like I understand the value of it, and it does help. But if I'm in the middle of a movie theater, man, I'm not Batman. I ain't gonna saddle up and swing away and go save somebody.
Yeah.
And sometimes the range, it was like this car was last seen in Springfield heading west. I was like, well, I'm 40 minutes east.
yeah,
so
not even heading towards me. But ABC, NBC, CBS, they had their special report.
Speaking of, also, like when they did the nuclear or the missile launch announcement in Hawaii, which was the same kind of concept there, people talked about how that changed their lives because it was a false alarm.
Oh,
And people had to make decisions about what was going to happen. Like, which family member do I go to right now?
wow,
And
yeah.
and now they have to live with that. So, and I think what is the government now can pump that out through your cell phone, like every cell phone on every network.
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me a bit, yeah. But these, special broadcasts, we interrupt our regularly scheduled program to bring you this breaking news. Well, whatever that breaking news was, it was never good.
To be fair, 90% of the time, at least, it was, this is a test of the emergency broadcast system.
Had this been a official emergency or
But
whatever.
when you're driving down the road and it's kind of raining outside and one of those hits the radio, that's some scary stuff.
that gets your attention.
One that my wife mentioned that we were supposed to be super, super scared of was acid rain.
Oh,
And I don't know
yeah.
about you, but as a kid, I thought that was like literal.
Yeah.
Like
It just melts
you
the skin
didn't
off
want
your
to be
face.
outside in the rain because it would burn you. And I understand that, like, yeah, it does damage to like infrastructure and it can affect, aquatic wildlife and plants and stuff. I also feel like, because of environmental protections and whatnot, that's a thing you don't hear very much about anymore.
No, I'd
But-
honestly forgotten it till you just brought it up.
But yeah, no, I remember that was like a big deal when I was a kid, and it was just gonna destroy the world. Again, I mean, a lot of these things were like, when they're not explained right to a kid, they're so much more terrifying than they actually are.
We take, as a children take everything very
It's literal.
literal. Yeah,
What
literal,
you
I
say-
guess, is
when
the
you
best
say
word.
acid rain,
Yeah.
I think, it's going to
Rain
burn my skin.
is going to be acid. Bad. What about getting snatched as a child? We learned that off of Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack.
Yeah, the stranger danger.
Stranger danger thing. But, obviously that does have some
Oh, no,
merit
there's
to
some
it.
validity to that.
If I remember, and I may be wrong, Robert Stack's boy got abducted.
No, it was America's Most Wanted.
America's Most Wanted.
The
You're
guy
right.
that's the host
The guy
of
that's
that.
the host of that. Yeah. So
I don't
I mean,
remember his name.
I don't either. Sorry, but yeah, again, that had some very good merit to it.
Well-
But yeah, the whole stranger danger, but you could be abducted from a mall or
And I've been
anywhere.
I listen to podcasts on my way to and from work. And actually here recently, I've heard a few stories where parents actually set up an abduction scenario to see how their kids would react.
Oh, that's twisted.
Yeah. And it was, one of them was like conducted by the local news station, and he approached the parents and was like, "Hey, is it okay if I do this?" And
What
the parents
the
were
heck?
like, "Yeah, like let's see what happens." And the one that I remember the most, it was two kids, and the guy walked up and he started talking to him, and the one kid was like nervous, but the other was like, well, I've seen this guy before, because he was like their local weatherman. He was familiar enough that they'd seen him, but they didn't really know who he was.
Not really a stranger.
And finally, he was just like, "Well, hey, you want to come over here to my car?" Or and I can show you the puppy or whatever.
That is so creepy.
And the one kid got up to go, and the other kid grabbed that kid and was like, no, we're going to go find our parents. And then found out like it was all a setup. And I remember one of the people who had a similar story was talking about like it was truly traumatic, and they still have like
I bet.
anxiety to this day. And that, yeah, like if somebody did that to, like if somebody approached me and was like, hey, can we do this with your kids? I think I'd tell them where to go.
Yeah, not only no, but hell no.
But I'm paranoid anyway when it comes to my kids. So, yeah, I definitely, I don't know. I
Wait till
definitely
you
wouldn't be
get
okay with that.
grandkids, Bill.
Well, that's still a little, but
Yeah, okay. Keep telling yourself that. Whatever you need to tell yourself to sleep at night. What about closet monsters of the monster beneath your bed?
well, first off, I think we talked about like me being terrified by movies and stuff. And I had
Traumatized.
a vivid imagination. I was scared of E.T. E.T. scared me. And I
E.T.
would have
made me
these,
sad, but
I
I
would
don't
have
know if
these-
it made me scared.
like, I don't know if they were almost like half dreams of like E.T. creeping out from under my bed. And that scared me. Now-
E.T. phone home.
I
E.T.
didn't really
touch Bill.
believe in the monster under the bed, but still.
I remember as a child I'd be in bed and it wasn't necessarily my closet. I kept that closet door closed, but like over in the corner. And you'd just kind of stare at the darkness and your mind would start messing with you. And
Yeah.
you'd see a reflect. Is that an eyeball? Oh my gosh, there's two eyes. There's something in the corner, staring at me. Then the stupid cat or something would
Well, my
knock
deal
the
was,
door open.
was always attics and basements.
No,
Attics
those are
and
creepy.
basements always had
Yeah.
stuff in them, whether they did or not. So, and then my grandparents' house, they had a couple of rooms you weren't supposed to go into as a kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I
And
think
it
a
was
lot of
always-
grandparents had those
Whatever
rooms.
was in
Looking
that
back,
room.
it's like, I wonder what was really in that room.
Well, one of them was my grandpa's den wasn't a room that you went into unless grandpa was there, so
I was
it was
going
always
to say,
weird.
are you confessing that you went into a room that your grandparents told you not to go into?
No,
No,
I never did that.
never.
Well, no, I mean,
You truly
you're
never
looking
did
at
that.
me like I did, but no. If
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was told not to do something, I usually didn't. So, but yeah, like my grandpa's den was one of those rooms like you didn't need to go in there unless grandpa was in there, and so it was always a weird place, and they always had the lights off, and it was a long room, and so like even if you peeked through the door, if the lights were off, you wouldn't see the other end of the room, and so it was always like shadowy and weird, and then when you're a little kid, like, oh well, you need to go under the house to look at this, or
you'll fit underneath
you
there.
need
None
to
of the
climb
rest
up
of
in
us
the attic
can.
and grab that, and it was always, I hated attics, attics and basements. Man.
I can relate to that. I've been in those situations. You're skinny enough, you can.
Yeah, you'll fit.
You'll fit down through there and look for this pipe that's hanging off, and turn there, and there's cobwebs and spiders and all kinds of stuff. I'd mentioned cats earlier. Do you remember the stories that came out? Dying alone in your apartment or your home.
I still
and
tell people
cats would eat your face off.
That's not a story, Eric. Cats are evil.
There seemed to be an abundance of those stories in the 80s.
But the truth of the matter is, and they this is like scientifically proven, I think. A dog
you
has
think?
loyalty to you, right? Like it's an emotional thing.
Yeah.
And so a dog won't resort to eating you until it has to, whereas a cat is a predator and you are food. And a
This
cat
human can
shares
no
your
longer
place.
dump my poop,
Yeah.
so I shall just eat its face.
This human has no use if he's not feeding me, so I will eat it.
Yeah, there was a lot of stories about, the old cat lady in a New York or Chicago apartment. And
Her eyes were eaten out.
the
of her
eyes
head.
were eating her ears and her nose. And, they found her 3 weeks later with her 24 tabby cats, and they were fat and sassy.
Cats
Like,
are evil.
Ugh.
I say that. I have a very loyal cat who was supposed to be a house cat, but then didn't want to be inside. And so just roams the neighborhood most of the time. And then just shows up in the morning. My wife puts some kibble on
Feed
the step.
me.
And, you call her Cat, and she,
Literally, the
she'll,
cat's name
you
is
can
Cat.
pet her like she's not wild. No, she has, her name is Venus.
Oh, okay.
But I just call her Cat now because she's Cat. Of course, I have 2 dogs now, and they're good dogs, and they live in the house, and they listen. Teddy was sitting in my spot this morning, and I was like, Teddy, will you please get off the couch? And he did. He just got right off the couch.
Wow.
Because he listens. If he was a cat, he would have looked at me and swore at me.
Yeah, F you.
Yeah.
How about scalding hot water from the tub or the shower?
Oh yeah, no, you couldn't put it all the way on hot.
Yeah, don't put it all the way.
And you had to turn on the cold.
Burn your flesh, melt it right off.
You had to, you're supposed to turn the cold and then work it down until.
There was a systematic system.
Of course, now as an adult, I just turn hot water all the way on and then add cold until I can tolerate it.
I don't think I even add the cold much anymore. Just crank the hot up.
Well, you're a masochist. So.
Yeah, true that. I got a ton.
Gas leaks, man. Was that ever a thing that you guys like?
Yeah.
Because we grew up with propane.
Yeah.
So the propane tank out in the, and the fact that the propane tank could explode if you played on it. We were told that too.
Yeah, don't get around the propane tank.
But if you smell
especially
gas,
4th of July.
which, if your pilot light goes out, whatever, you're going to smell a little bit of gas. And if the tank gets low, you're start to get the smell.
A little gas. Yeah.
But it was always like the house is just going to explode. And it was like, I was very much into my adulthood before I learned like the concentration of gas necessary. It's a lot of gas.
I will say I had that fear, but I was also that dumb kid that would have a wasp or something in the house. Now, mom and dad wasn't home, of course. Let me pre-state this. I'd grab that old like Clairol hairspray and a lighter and just flame torch the house to kill a wasp. Yeah,
no, we used to climb up on the propane tank because it was like, that has the handles at either end. It was like a horse.
Oh, yeah. Or a rocket ship.
My grandparents would yell at me. But even now, like in my house, my kids will freak out if they smell gas. And it's like, oh, a pilot light went out or something. And now
Taco Bell.
Well, not that kind of gas, Eric. But yeah, like I remember just being scared to death that a house was going to explode if you smelled gas.
Well, again, we saw that in the movies, TV shows all the time. It's like a car accident where a car flips over. Within 30 seconds, that car is going to blow up. 100%
well,
of the
action
time.
movies are so unrealistic. My son, who has now studied HVAC, his favorite thing to do is when you're watching a movie and they're crawling through ductwork, ducts don't support human weight. They're not designed to.
Oh, there's no way.
And he's like, we were...
Part of them are hung from a suspended ceiling already. We
were doing a role-playing game last night, and part of that involved them sneaking out through the ducts in the ceiling, and he's like, Dad, that wouldn't happen. Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, first of all, this is a sci-fi setting in a space station. You don't know a ductwork in space station. But anyway. But yeah, that's... action movies were just so over the top that you just knew, like... Well, one, you could shrug off most injuries, unless you got gut shot, then you were going to die. But yeah, like... I guess a thimble full of gasoline was enough to blow up a building,
Oh, yeah. Blow all the windows out from multiple levels. But yeah, the seriousness of the car flipping, I remember, driving back and forth to St. Louis, Springfield, we would occasionally see a car accident. And that would run through my mind as a child. That, Dad, hurry up. The car's going to blow up. It's over on its side. I thought that was a real thing.
I actually drove by a burning car one time in Tennessee and got in the wrong lane ahead of time, not realizing what it was. And like it was on the shoulder. I was in that lane.
Right there.
And it was hot.
Yeah.
But yeah, like in the movies and stuff. That's the other thing, like a car rolling over, like it's instantly going to explode.
Oh, yeah.
Or you get an accident. An accident always leads to a fire in a car because of the gasoline, Like that's not really what happens, but.
Speaking of movies, FBI warnings on VHS tapes on the front of every VHS tape.
Yeah,
there was this warning label, apparently written and applied personally by the FBI. It said if you copy this movie, you will be hunted down and imprisoned for 5 years and fined $250,000.
Well, using that logic, my grandmother should have spent 2, maybe 3,000 years in jail and been on the hook to the government for $3 billion.
$250,000 for every movie that you caught. Now, that was a legitimate sticker, for those of you listening, that was put on every VHS tape.
My grandma would rent movies from the video store, and if she liked the movie, she would transfer it to a VHS. And she had like the extended ones, so like, she would have 3 videos. Or 3 movies on each cassette.
You could have Rambo 1, Rambo 2, and Rambo 3 all on one tape.
And she had an inventory. She had a notebook with like cassette number, whatever number, and then what movies were on there, and what timestamp to fast forward to
get to the second
movie. We would just go to Grandma's
or...
house after a while instead of going to the rental place. I saw Caveman like 1 million times that way. Okay. here's a weird childhood memory now that we've gotten to this point. There was movie, I want to say maybe Caveman, the movie, which we probably shouldn't have been watching as kids anyway.
I don't know. I'm not familiar with
It had
that.
Ringo Starr in it and Dennis Quaid and Shelley Long.
Wow, what a cast.
Ringo was the star.
Wow.
When you think about Shelley Long and Dennis Quaid, and then Ringo was the lead.
Wow.
And it was about cavemen. It had some really, really bad stop motion animation dinosaurs and stuff in it. And there was some sexual stuff. I mean, jokes that wouldn't be appropriate for kids, but I think the movie before it on the cassette was like I Spit on Your Grave. And I accidentally like got to there's like a very graphic rape scene, I guess, in that movie. And I had accidentally saw that as a child, which again, I mean, I apologize for dropping that particular word, but yeah, like I shouldn't have seen that.
It traumatized you. What about, and we may have touched upon this in the first one, ride in an escalator, one of those electric stairways.
Oh, and you got to pick up your feet
Gotta
or it's
pick
going
up
to suck
your
you
feet.
in.
Your shoelaces. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Your shoelaces get wound up, suck the shoes right
Have
off,
you-
roll your foot, your whole leg, maybe your body all the way up to your rib cage.
Have you ever seen what happens when an escalator fails? Have you ever seen any of those videos?
Mm.
Like, there's a video of one that collapses with a person on it, and apparently that's like, it
That's
turns you to
bad.
hamburger.
I would say that's bad. Yeah.
Yeah, that's gnarly.
Well, I do have a firsthand true story. I was about 8 or 10. We were at the Battlefield Mall in Springfield, Missouri, and there
Is
was
there an escalator?
there's
in
an
the
escalator
Battlefield? Oh,
there.
in JCPenney.
J.C. Penney's.
Yep.
And I, for one, already had this phobia, this fear. And again, being a preteen kid, dumb, obliterate, my shoelace had come undone. And I think either mom or dad, one, while we were on the escalator, even pointed and said, "Your shoelace is undone." I just freaked out.
You knew you were going to die.
I knew I was going to die. And guess what? My shoelace did go down in the top of that escalator, and it did pull my shoe off. Dad was right there. He grabbed me. But I mean, there's no way your foot would go down through the normal way. But it was enough. It hurt. And if I didn't have a phobia before, I definitely did after that.
Wow.
It became a game almost with our friends, or my friends and stuff. We would go, you'd kind of jump off that last step. You know, you didn't want to be like right there, so you just like jump over it. But so yeah, that actually happened.
I remember a big one being a country kid and running around the woods with snakes and snake bites.
I was going to say, you were running with a snake?
No.
I was like, Bill, I can't imagine.
But no, the idea was that you had to be afraid of being bitten by a snake enough that like you would learn about it in school and stuff and the basic first aid. And of course,
never suck the poison out. That's
in my
BS.
40 plus years, I don't think I've ever even been close enough to be bit.
Oh, you're lucky.
Now, I do remember hiking with my kid and him almost stepping on a copperhead to the point where I shoved him off the trail, and then he turned around and got all indignant. And I'm like, you almost stepped on the copperhead right there. But I did stumble. I was the kind of kid that would like flip over rocks and boards and stuff on the ground looking for worms and bugs and whatnot. And I did find a copperhead nest, which I apparently attempted to stomp the babies to death
You
for some
did not
reason.
pay attention in school, Bill.
Well, they didn't bite me, so I made it. I survived.
Wow. You are a
Well,
tough guy.
and my grandma had this deal. I don't know if you ever heard this, but that baby snakes had much stronger
supposedly
venom,
they're like 3 times stronger. or
which is absolute crap. They don't. They have much weaker venom because they're baby snakes. They don't have as much.
Well, for one, their mouth is so small they couldn't probably bite you anyhow.
And
But-
it is possible to get what you call a dry bite, which they don't inject any venom, either because they've already used it or they just don't do that. But,
Yeah. It's not
but
like
yeah,
a
you don't suck the venom out.
everlasting potion of vile poison. Once they bite it, a lot of times they can only bite once or twice, and then it's out of their system till they build it back up.
But yeah, you don't suck the venom out.
Yeah,
Whatever
that's
you do.
again TV, movie, Hollywood BS. What about, did your parents or your grandparents ever tell you you're going down the road, it's dark, don't have the overhead dome light on?
That was also part of the conversation about swimming. My
You're
wife
gonna
too.
get us arrested.
Yeah. I really think that was just more as an adult, like you don't want it on because it just makes it harder. I don't think it was illegal, but I think it was just annoying. And as a kid, you were bored, you wanted to do something, and maybe you had a comic book you wanted to read or a toy you wanted to
Drop
play
your
with.
toy in the floor, couldn't find it. Yeah.
But yeah, I remember my mom said, you can't drive with that light on, which you can. I don't think there's a law about that.
Funny story here, semi-related. And Bill is going to judge me on this. I just already know
I'm
it.
going to judge you anyway.
But
so.
Kids were little. We were traveling. We were out of state. I don't remember where we were at. And Alex had picked up this little inexpensive space sword. It was white, and you push a button, and it had like some lights that went through the blade, kind of deal. It wasn't a name brand or anything. But anyhow, he wanted this, and I thought Sis might get one, and they battle it out, but no, Sis, Shannon got something else. But regardless, we're going down. It's dark. We're traveling, and I think Sarah was driving. I was in the passenger seat, and I had this brilliant idea as an adult parent, Bill. So yeah, start judging now. Hey, Alec, hand me that flashy sword you got back there. And I stuck it up on the dash. And every time there would be a car that would come, I'd hit that button. And it simulated like a cop's, the lights going on. And so many people would like slam their brakes on and everything. And I had way too much fun as an adult with that.
What about driving barefoot?
I was always told not to do that, but I was
told it was
also
illegal as well.
Yeah, illegal. But I was told if you have flip-flops, sandals of some sort, you're safer to drive barefoot than using the flip-flops or sandals because you could hook the harness or netting or whatever on it. So I have driven barefoot because I had like flip-flop sandals on in the summer. Like we were going down to the river to go swimming or something. But it's a very weird feeling. But yes, now that you mention it, I did believe that driving barefoot was illegal. And know if there is any law on that.
Yeah, I don't know if it is or not. I've never actually seen that it is, but it might be. I don't know.
Probably not the best idea.
No, I mean,
it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's awkward.
How about removing those annoying mattress or pillow tags? The one that said, do not ever remove under penalty of law.
But you got to read the whole tag. That's only for the person selling
We were kids, Bill. We didn't read the whole tag.
Well, maybe you
And our
didn't.
parents told us,
I was a
you do
different kind
not
of
cut
kid.
that tag off.
No, yeah, I remember that, though. My mom would freak out. I think I ripped one off a pillow one time at my grandma's, and she was like, what are you doing?
Because it's much better to lay there and use the pillow, and it just constantly slap you in the face all night while you try to sleep. But how about don't swallow that mouthwash? You gargle and spit that stuff all back out because it's like acid, and it'll hurt your stomach.
First of all,
could possibly kill you.
Why would you want to drink mouthwash? It's terrible. Second of all,
especially like Listerine.
You're supposed to rinse and spit. No one ever had to tell me not to swallow mouthwash. I wasn't going to.
Oh, I remember a dentist, for some reason, come to the school. They give you a little toothbrush and little tiny deals. And he made a point to tell us never to swallow the toothpaste. No, it wasn't mouthwash, but I kind of thought the same thing. It's like,
you're not
people like grab a tube of toothpaste and just like, nom, nom, nom.
Well, I mean, it says you're not supposed to swallow more than what you would use to brush, right? So I guess, but most people don't understand you're only supposed to use like a pea-sized amount anyway.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks you have to emulate what's on the
fill
package.
The entire top.
So
of
yeah,
the
you've got to
toothbrush.
have like that 1-inch line that curls over.
Way too much. You're gonna be foaming like a rabid dog.
I didn't know that till I was an adult with children. Like I did. I filled the whole toothbrush.
Again, TV.
Yeah.
It was our best teacher. Dare I say it? Alien abductions. Taking it even a step further. Anal probing.
First of all, I think we're the only two people that had that concern as children.
Oh,
my mom
there had
never
to been more.
talked about like being abducted by it. Now, I read a lot of books about stuff like that.
There was a lot of people said they were abducted and anally probed by aliens.
I don't.
I always asked, I had to laugh at that one to this day, why would aliens travel hundreds, if not thousands of light years to Earth and have nothing better to do than to analyze your bunghole? I don't get it.
I saw a comic strip this morning, and I've seen it before. It always makes me chuckle. But it's two aliens. You see their little UFO in the background, and they're standing at the foot of the cross, the crucifixion cross, and they're looking up, and the one alien's leaning over, and he goes, "You know what we need to do? We need to get the F out of here right now."
Did you ever have a fear of falling into a cistern? one of those
Like a
old
well?
water wells.
That's another thing that we were supposed
Drowning?
to be super scared of, but I've never run across a random unmarked well.
Well, they are speckled all over the backwoods here in the Ozarks. Growing up and exploring a lot of these old abandoned houses, I did discover a few of these. I did come across one or two that, like, through the years they'd put wood and tin down, but it was pretty rickety. Like if you were to step on it, you would have fell through it.
I have never found one. I've been places where there was like, oh, hey, there's an old well over there, and people would have it marked or whatever, like don't play over there. But
Well,
I've
again,
never been just running around and found one.
I'm going to blame Hollywood, TV and movies. That was kind of a big thing.
The Baby Jessica thing, it was all over the news.
Yeah. You fall down into this, and they emulate it that it could be like 25, 35 foot deep, and there's like no bottom, and there's just water
Well, my
and
thought
leeches
was if
and
you fell into
snakes
a well,
and-
you were just going to die because you were just going to fall that far.
Well, I will say the ones that I personally have looked at, most of the time people filled with trash, tires, lumber. I mean, it's great snake haven, don't get me wrong, but you wouldn't have fallen more than a couple feet, literally. The other one, I do remember one, it was probably 3 to 4 foot deep, and it did have a little bit of water, but like maybe 4 inches, 5 inches of water in it. Now, I don't know what was underneath that. It could have been quicksand that we talked about in episode 1. But, besides like a snake or something like that. But that was something my parents used to always say, you're going to fall through an old cistern and you're going to drown, and let's face it, if you did fall down through one of those, it could be difficult to get out, or, you could.
I always figured you were more at risk of getting hurt.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't figure there'd be
rusty
water at
nails,
the bottom or anything. You'd
stuff like
fall
that.
and break your leg or whatever. I think one, and it kind of fits nicely into with some modern stuff. It's just the threat of AI. Although we didn't call it AI back then, like war games or Skynet or whatever. Like just the idea that computers would get smart enough to start making decisions for us, which they have.
They have, yeah.
And what was the old sci-fi trope is like, oh, well, humanity's so dangerous that the only way to protect humanity is to destroy humanity. Like, that's the only way you can protect. Which, to be fair, I think as long as there's been 2 people on the planet, somebody wanted to hit somebody else with a rock. So.
Yeah, true. I mean, it's the story
But-
Terminator has taught us,
But the meme I've seen lately is, like, AI was supposed to make our lives easier so that we didn't have to work and we could make art and music. And instead, AI is making art and music, and our jobs are still garbage.
Yeah, and getting worse probably. Yeah, I think we did touch upon it in the first episode, but you were saying that things as an adult that would fear you. AI really is a concern of mine, not for the reasons that a lot of people might think, but and again, I may have already touched on this, but we have lost a lot of our history. We have lost a lot of what our grandparents, great-grandparents did to survive in hard times, the Great Depression and different things. There are simple things that we could do, honestly, not taking that much time, not taking that much resources, that you wouldn't have to go buy at a store. One example is making soap, just different things like that. A lot of those arts, those traits have been lost. There's very few people. And I always like to have reference to, the how-to books, whether it be, this is how you change out a ceiling fan in your living room to add a light switch, whatever. But there's some old-timer wisdom there, like building a root cellar, to preserve food and different things. We have gotten so far removed from that, and the books were there for a long time. Now we're to the internet, and now we have this AI, which you and I visited about quite a lot. It's so hard to tell what's true and what's false anymore with any statement. They can make it look so legit. They'll take a similar well-known broadcasting network, rearrange a letter just slightly. So at a glance, the icon even looks the same. And you swear, I took this directly off of CBS News or, whatever. And you start down this rabbit hole, and it is so absurd. But there are those ones that are on that fine line where the way AI works is it's going out and it's scouring the internet for information and then coming back and belching that up as a report to you. If you got somebody that's a jokester that posts something let's go eat some Tide Pods. It'll make you healthy.
Well,
AI doesn't know that's not
we've
a
talked
good
about
thing.
AI before, where like they have the AI program and then eventually it devolves into Nazism or whatever. But that's because of what's being fed into it. And a lot of people,
Yeah.
when they're like, ooh, look, this AI, they will intentionally feed it things
Yes.
to make it be terrible. I believe I saw one of the weird AI things recommendations was like, how do I solve depression? Suicide.
Mhm.
I was like, well, I mean, yeah, I guess that does the trick, but that's not what you're looking for,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
AI is tricky. And I mean, I will sit here and tell you, I'm still firmly in the camp of we're going to stray into a point in time where we let AI make decisions it shouldn't be making.
Absolutely.
I think it's going to worm its way into military applications and things like
Yes.
that. And if you've seen the newer RoboCop, you know, you've got that idea of like, you know, we want a human in control. But I also think like drone strikes and stuff like that, where it's almost video gamified, I think that takes out the personal aspect of it. It's very easy to look at things on a computer screen and think that they're not real. So, but I am deathly afraid of the day where AI is making like decisions for government and things like that.
Well,
And there's a thing. I saw it today, or maybe it was yesterday. There is a AI running for parliament in the UK. And there's a guy who's
running for the position of parliament.
they like a senator,
Yeah.
you know, parliament.
Yeah.
But there's a guy. He's got this AI programmed on the computer, I guess, and the AI is running. He has said, he goes, my face is the face you're going to see. My voice is the voice you're going to hear. But every policy decision that I say is going to be generated by the AI.
Oh my gosh.
So
Talk about playing Russian roulette.
that's like some Black Mirror stuff, man.
We've touched upon it. Getting back to the fundamentals, whatever might happen in an economy total breakdown, people then trying, one, if you could even get on the internet, I mean, there is that, to be able to try to find information to care for yourselves or your family. I had mentioned that, you know, Sarah and I dabble a little bit with collecting herbs and apothecary, and that's something that's kind of sparked our interest recently. There are so many similar plants out there. This one can be deadly and kill you in 2 seconds. This one looks very similar, but it has, you know, a much more positive effect. AI is, I'm not confident and trustworthy in AI that it's going to know that difference. So people literally could go to the internet looking for information to try to help themselves and essentially kill themselves.
But at the same time, you have AI that is able to diagnose cancer before a trained physician.
True.
So
There's always the other side of the coin.
there's definitely a use for it. But again, the promise of AI was it was going to make everybody's lives better. It really hasn't made it better for anybody except for the people that make money off it.
Mm-hmm.
And
The people that design the AI.
until we live in this Star Trek future where money is obsolete and we just take care of ourselves and our fellow man, I mean, it's going to be corrupted. No matter how good the intention is, no matter how good the idea is, I know that's me and my rant.
I can't even fathom waking up each day and not having to worry about money or medical or...
I wish I could do that.
Oh my gosh.
I wish I could go to bed at night and not worry about what the next day brings. If I get in a car wreck on the way to work, that could be the end of everything I've ever worked for.
Yeah.
Just monetarily speaking, I could lose every dime I've ever had paying medical bills.
But can you imagine just waking up, well, what am I going to create, invent,
I would love
write
that.
today?
I would love to be a creator,
Oh my gosh.
but
That has to be
it doesn't work.
a wild freedom. Well, going back, did you ever fear wolf attacks or feral dogs? There was a big deal about dogs
You
going
were always
wild.
supposed to be wary of dogs you didn't know. And, basically you just treated any dog you didn't know as if it was dangerous. Now, of course, as a child, every dog you don't know that comes up to you friendly like is, you're going to pet it and play with it. And
wagging his tail and
so,
his tongue hanging out.
and I would say for the most part, most dogs aren't dangerous. And the ones that are, you're going to know ahead of time.
Well, a lot of those may have rabies or
And
some reason.
The other part of your question, what part of Missouri did you grow up in that wolves were a problem?
Again, Hollywood. But again, no, I said wolves. There was some fear.
I mean, I'll give you coyote.
that wolves were being sent here, they escaped. You know, we had, like down around Branson, there are several wild refuge parks, even in Springfield. And there was some stories that a wolf had escaped.
I never heard those stories.
And that it was going to breed with the wild feral dogs, and we were going to have this hybrid wolf feral dog. And I mean, let's face it, watching TV and movies back then, there was one, I think it was a TV show. I don't think it was a movie. And it was a young teenage boy. He was riding home, lived in a very rural area. I want to say Mississippi, maybe. But there was this horrific scene. He's out here in the middle of nowhere, swamps kind of around him. He's riding his bike home from school. Guy's a little backpack on. He's just pedaling like crazy. And he sees this scrangey, mangy looking dog, not a wolf, but a dog, come up out of the ditch and starts growling at him. So of course he slams, slides in the gravel, and he stops. And the next thing you know, there's another one comes up over the other side. And then up on the hill, you see like 4 or 6 silhouettes. And he ends up pedaling just as fast as he can. And these dogs are chasing him, and they're grabbing his denim jeans and ripping them and grabbing his flesh and his legs. And that kind of crap Hollywood should be smacked down for.
Well, speaking of wild animals and whatnot, another thing was getting lost in the woods.
Oh.
Like that was something, that was a real fear as a kid, like less so as an instilled fear. But it was always like, you're going to get out in the woods and you're going to get lost no matter what. And to be fair,
I've heard some of your stories. You used to traipse around quite a bit in the woods.
And I got lost more than once. But the idea is like, even in rural Missouri, most of the time, like you find a fence, you follow the fence, you get to a road, you get to a house, whatever.
Follow the road, follow the creek.
The one time I did get lost, it was because I intentionally diverted from the path back. I knew where we needed to go. I was really good with like landmarks and stuff, like, oh, well, this cut in this riverbank, and then we go that way. We skipped it and ended up in a whole different place that we shouldn't have been. But yeah, that was one of the things my mom was always like, you guys are going to get lost out there in the woods. And I mean, it never happened. I never got lost in the woods. Well, like that one time. But
it only lasted 2 weeks.
and the thing is as an adult, it seems like my sense of direction is terrible, and I routinely end up getting lost on road trips.
Oh, I get lost on road trips constantly. But GPS, thank God for GPS.
Yeah.
I remember back in the day we had the big atlases that we used to have to pull out.
I was going to say, that goes back to your talking about lost knowledge. I mean, now it's, GPS tells me where to go and I go there.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you. I have ended up down dead-end roads that GPS did not realize had become dead-end roads.
Yeah, I went down here
and was like,
couple
what
weeks
do I do
ago,
now?
And on GPS it showed the road continued, and physically being there was never a road there.
It's like that scene in The Office where it says go left or whatever, and he drives down the boat ramp.
Yeah.
And it's like, I told you not to turn. Well, she told me to turn. Well, she's a computer.
Yep.
Do you remember the early days of the internet? And like everybody on the internet was just out to scam you and steal your information or lure you into stuff. You were a little older than me when the internet came about, but
I didn't really have the fear of being scammed, but hacked.
Oh yeah, you had
that.
You
for sure.
Always being afraid of being hacked.
And I'm a teenager. I mean, it's like, seriously,
what information
I didn't even have a bank account.
Wants?
Yeah, what information would I have? But I will say, and hopefully the police aren't listening, but a friend of mine and I actually hacked into the local newspaper computers one time. And we thought that was just really cool. And then it hit us that, oh my gosh, they probably know that we're here. So we immediately logged off and we didn't touch the computer for like another week or so.
Well, and it's like the idea, when you're at work and they talk about they monitor your emails and all that. And I actually had an IT guy tell me one time, he goes, as much as they tell you that they can do all that, they don't track everything you do all the time.
I'm sure there's certain keywords or something.
Yeah, they only track you when they have cause to do it. So whatever you're doing on your computer, as long as you're, I have always lived with like the idea of I don't look at anything not work related, obviously. But yeah, the idea was he's like, they're not tracking you 24/7.
I have a funny story I have to interject here. In the position that I was formerly in, I worked for quality department. We had a shipment of parts, and I'll keep this as vague as I possibly can. We had a shipment of parts that came in with some knives, some shivs in it. There were some shells. This did come from Mexico. And it started to be kind of a reoccurring thing. Dummy me. I decided to take a look on the internet at work, and I think the keyword was shiv or knife. because
weapons.
I'm trying to track where this is coming from. I've contacted our supplier. I'm talking with our representative. It was legitimate. I was trying to help with a purpose. But corporate contacted my boss and mentioned keywords that was caught in the search. And so I knew that was that was a real thing, which I quickly relayed and they understood, and it was all taken care of very easy. But so yeah, there's certain keywords that you just don't want to. It may be legitimate, but you want to proceed with caution.
Well, I mean, unless we want to start drifting into the things I'm afraid of as an adult, which could absolutely eat up a whole nother episode at this point, make this vaguely personal and maybe a little heavy. As an adult right now, I'm more afraid that I don't know how to be happy like I was when I was a kid. I feel like I live with a level of anxiety and stress all the time that I cannot recall the last time I felt truly just relaxed and in the moment and happy.
I can relate to that.
And I don't want to sound heavy or anything, but I mean, that's just kind of my mindset.
When we were kids, and we mentioned on another podcast that we did on the McDonald's playground equipment, I even mentioned, as kids, we're not fully comprehending everything, and we're kind of dumb. Let's just say it that way. But sometimes that's bliss.
Well, the phrase ignorance is bliss. I think the more you know, the less happy you actually can be, because you just know the outcome.
I have a lot of happy childhood memories, way more childhood memories happy than I could ever have as an adult.
Yeah.
And I'll even take it a step further to build off of what Bill said, even with like the birth of my children. That brings is a celebration. That's happy.
Yeah.
But I was petrified they were going to be born with something.
Simultaneously the most happy, and yet just a whole new level of anxiety you didn't have before.
Yeah, yeah.
I told my kids, and it sounded bad in the moment, but I was talking to my son, and I said, so one day I said, sometimes I regret having kids. And he just, what? And I was like, look, not in a way that I'm upset
it's okay,
that you
son,
guys
you were
exist.
adopted.
I love you kids, and I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you're a part of my life, and I'm glad that I've got to be a part of that. But it's like, what about the world that you're going to grow into? I'm so terrified of things now.
Yeah.
That it's like,
Sarah and I had the talk. Do we even want to bring children into this life? We had very serious talks about that. And we did talk about even adoption and different things like that. But yeah, I mean, in one way, it's one of the happiest days of my life. But on the other, I remember I was sweating bullets, man.
And see, even as an adult, the things that should make you happy end up being incredibly stressful.
Yeah.
When I had my transition in employment, I was miserable and had more than once talked about needing to change my employment. You and I had these conversations a lot.
Yep.
But when I, found myself jobless, of course, that's one of the most stressful things a person can go through. And I really feel like I'm still dealing with the fallout of that.
You will.
And
you will for a period of time, a long period of time. You lost that comfort, what you knew. And again, I've said it and I'll say it before, it's amazing what you can get used to.
Well,
but that was, at least you knew what to expect.
Well, and it's like you said, as a kid, you didn't have, your kids can't wait to grow up.
Yeah.
And adults just wish they had more, they didn't.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but again, when I reflect on that being truly happy, I can't recall just that childlike delight, that level in anything as an adult.
I think for a number of years, I really clung on to Christmas because I had a lot of very fond childhood memories. I was spoiled. My parents spoiled me at Christmas. I mean, I had a lot of packages. I was an only child, so I will say that. But Christmas became magical for me because I wanted to try to do that then for my kids.
Yeah.
And now I'm trying to do it for my grandkids. It's not for me.
But
it's really not. It's
as an adult,
for them. I guess maybe that's the way it's supposed to be.
The anxieties that come with.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. We got them some presents, but they're on the credit card. We're going to be paying that off for the next year. There was a very real
possibility last year of me being unemployed at Christmas time. How do you make Christmas work when you don't even know if you're going to have a job? Which luckily things came together and I did start my new job, but still. And I think like you, I've kind of clung to Christmas as that thing. But even now as an adult, there's very little surprise in Christmas for me because my wife and kids will be like, "What do you want for Christmas, Dad?" And I was like, "Well, whatever." And it's gotten to a point where I won't even answer my kids. It's just like, if you want to buy me something, just find something you think I want. And I would much rather have what little surprise is there. Well, then half the time they'll order it on my Amazon account with their card. And then
So you get to see what it is before you get it.
Yeah, it pops up in my mail anyway. But
surprise.
Even the moments where I feel like I should be happy, when I lost my job, when I got the job offer for my new job, my wife broke down in tears. She was so happy. But all I could think of was, okay, now I've accepted this new job. Can I do it? What happens when I get there? What if this place sucks? What if they're terrible? What if they treat me bad? What if I can't do the job? It's even things that should make you happy as an adult, because you have that knowledge of, like, if this fails or whatever.
Yep.
That I absolutely look at people that I think just don't know any better and think, but how much better would I be if I just didn't know?
Yeah.
Like, if I just didn't have all these anxieties.
It's a real shame as adults that it's almost to have, we'll call it the happy pill. You've almost got to take a negative pill. Yeah. You can't seem to have one without the other, because now we are trained to think about how much did that cost?
Yeah.
How are we going to pay for that? What am I going to give up to be able to do this times whatever? There's always that balance. Whereas a kid, you saw a toy at Kmart or Walmart and you had $5 in your pocket and you could go home with that G.I. Joe. By golly, that was hours of entertainment, and you didn't worry about anything else.
Yeah, that's
those days are gone, I'm afraid.
I didn't want to get that heavy, but that was also something I wanted to say. And we're talking about things we're afraid of.
Yeah.
And my fear is just like, do I, as an adult who thinks he's educated and has to admit at times I'm very stupid. I fell out of a chair at work this week. I'm not proud of that. I don't know what happened, but just, right on my butt as the chair rolled away behind me. So,
was there witnesses?
Oh God, no. I would have quit my job, I think. I don't think anybody saw.
It always hurts worse if there's witnesses.
I don't think anybody saw. If they did, they didn't say anything, which I appreciate their, discretion. But no. But even something like that, as if you saw somebody fall on as a kid, if you fall on your butt, you laugh about it.
Oh my gosh.
As an adult,
yes.
It's just like, God, I hope anybody see that.
I was such a little rat in school. I remember it was high school, and we had separate buildings we had to go to. In the art building, you had to go outside, and there were steps and a sidewalk. It was covered with ice. It was one of those. It was sleeted all day. This is how rude I was, Bill, as a high school student. This kid, he was known to always be running. He would fly through the hallway and like shove people. He was rude himself. And I was front seat to his karma. He comes flying out the door. He hits those steps, bounces down 4 of them. His tailbone, you can hear just boom, 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 going down those steps. And then he kind of hits the sidewalk. You think, well, it's over now. Oh no, the sidewalk's at a slope. So he continues to slide down till he kind of goes off one corner into the grass. As I walk past him, and of course I've got a couple girls that are hanging out with me, I look down at him and it's like, I bet you feel like an idiot, don't you? I look back and it's like, wow, that was just
a jerk.
I was a jerk. That was brutal.
No, and see, that's the thing.
Karma served.
As an adult, I can absolutely look back on young me and say I was a jerk, and then realize, like, we're always trying to strive for better. I know there were things that I did that I'm not proud of.
Yep.
There were experiences that I had as a younger kid, things I did, things I said, but yeah, even those, like, I don't know about you, I have anxiety about things that I did that don't matter in my life anymore sometimes. I'll literally be sitting there going to, getting ready to go to sleep at night, and my incredibly awkward first date will pop into my head and give me anxiety. How does something that happened when I was 16 years old have any impact on me? Why am I losing sleep over my weird experience with a girl when I was 16?
When neither one of you probably realized what was going on.
No, neither one of us. Like, it was just dumb then. It's dumb now.
Dumber now. Yeah.
But I live with a level of anxiety that I would not wish on anyone. And unfortunately, I know my oldest son has inherited it from me. And I'll tell you, I know he's had to talk to doctors about it, which That's it. I mean, when you're a man of our generation, you don't do that, right? Like,
Oh.
you deal with it on your own.
Yeah. Our generation was very stringent about that. And I'm happy to see that it has lightened up a little bit. You know.
Well, dear listener, Eric has let you down this evening, and that Eric did not bring a headline.
True story.
But
My thoughts was,
I
I
did.
already did a headline for this.
Well, it's a different episode.
Continuation of the first episode.
I brought a headline.
Bill's an overachiever. That's what I heard.
From Upworthy.com by Annie Renault, dated October 16th, 2022. How watching horror films can actually help some people manage their anxiety.
This has not worked for you, Bill.
Spoiler alert, it doesn't work for me. Seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? The idea that watching horror movies could make you less anxious might sound backward. Anxiety is basically fear. How could making yourself afraid on purpose by watching a horror movie help? Well, the author, while talking to her daughter's therapist, was told that anxiety thrives on avoidance. If you don't confront your fears, they get worse.
Okay, yeah.
So the more you try to avoid what scares you, the stronger the anxiety over it becomes.
Face your fears.
That concept forms the basis of exposure therapy. Instead of avoiding things that make you anxious, exposure therapy involves approaching what scares you little by little and processing your fear each step of the way. Eventually, your tolerance builds and those fears become diminished. Watching horror films as an anxiety management tool isn't for everyone, but it can function as a form of exposure therapy. Jocelyn McDonnell, therapist at the Family Institute at Northwestern University, told the Huffington Post that horror films can be a useful tool. Quote, a client could see that even though their heart is racing and their muscles are tight during the movie, they really aren't in any danger. This realization could help them in future situations in which physical sensations of anxiety are present, because they could remember that even though their bodies are preparing for possible danger, it is likely just a false alarm. Kurt Oakley, founder of Oakley Psychotherapy in San Francisco, explained to Healthline how watching horror can help us learn to cope with stress. Horror can actually teach us how to handle real-world stress better. During a stressful film, we are intentionally exposing ourselves to anxiety-producing stimuli. We usually don't engage in the same unhealthy coping mechanisms that we utilize in real life. We learn how to manage the stress in the moment. This practice can translate to helping us manage everyday stressors and fear. On a related note, a study published in January of 2021 found that horror fans exhibited greater resilience during the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. Some people, of course, do not find any relief from horror movies and may actually find them more anxiety-producing. It's wise to do what feels right for you and discuss the idea with a therapist if you're unsure. Scary movies may not be for everyone, but surprisingly might be right for certain people who already do daily battle with their own fears.
Interesting.
So I figured in an episode about fears, let's
Very
talk
fitting.
about how using your fears might work.
Well, Bill, let me say hats off to you. You did such a fine job. I don't feel bad at all about not having a
All
headline
right.
because
Well,
yours
good.
was that good.
It was good.
It was good.
Well, and
Very fitting.
we're getting close to the end here anyway, so
So what are the things that scare you out there? Did we touch upon them in one of the 2 episodes? Or
did you skip your question?
I didn't do question. I didn't do head. I told you I didn't do
You
that.
ball dropping son of a bitch.
It was 1 o'clock this morning. I wanted to go to bed.
Well, Eric's in a hurry to wrap up this episode, but I have a question because I follow the format of our program.
Eric did not follow the rules of this.
Eric-
I was afraid to follow the rules.
Eric has let you down, dear listener. But I am here to say I've got a question.
Okay, Bill, what's your question?
What is the most terrified you've ever seen someone, either yourself or someone else? Please don't embarrass anyone. Like, you don't have to name names, but like the most physically scared. I don't mean like mentally distressed, but just like physically in the moment terrified of something. Because I know mine. I actually have 2, so I can help fill space.
I am struggling a bit with anything firsthand.
I know my firsthand one. It's such a traumatic memory that it's lodged in my brain to this day.
Well, Bill, since you've done all the homework and I came unprepared to class, I'll let you start off and I'll think about it for a while.
Silver Dollar City used to have a ride. It was a diving bell where you went in and it went underwater, I say with air quotes, and then it would make like the sound of a diving bell under pressure, you know, the metal
Yeah.
and all that. And then like the bolts would pop off and water would spray in and stuff like that.
That sounds horrific.
Well, as an adult, you would know that this is an attraction, right? And
Right.
it's not really doing that. You probably don't even go underwater. It probably just fills up and
Got
you know.
a spray hose that's kind of leaking some water.
As
out.
a child, I 100% legitimately believe that we were going to
We're
die
going to drown.
underwater from this thing collapsing in on us or filling up with water. We were going to drown. I thought it was real. And I remember being terrified as a kid. And I would have been this may have been before my little brother was born. Like, I was a little kid. But that was the most terrified I ever remember myself being. Now, as far as someone else goes, I have a friend whose daughter is very, very afraid of thunderstorms and the potential for tornadoes. We were on vacation and we had gone to the coast, and a storm came in kind of off the ocean. And, you know, with nothing to stop it, those storms are pretty powerful. We were in a beach house, and the common living space of the beach house had one wall that was all glass. Sliding glass doors, big floor-to-ceiling windows on either side, just all glass. We watched that storm come in off the ocean and just move in on us. And I remember that girl being so terrified of being in this storm. And don't get me wrong, it was a heck of a storm.
Right.
To the point where even I was like, man, it's going to bust a window or something. Like, but again, you know, we're living in we weren't living, but we were staying in a house that was built for these weather conditions. Had probably weathered countless hurricanes, and this was just a thunderstorm. But I don't think I'd ever seen someone as scared as that girl was. So yeah, that would be mine.
Well, two things have come to mind. One is very dark, but you mentioned the thunderstorm. Sarah and I we've been able to take one cruise in our entire life, and that was to the Bahamas. We actually won that through her family's carpet store when I was manager down there. But there was one particular night that they had told us, they didn't like confine you to your rooms, but they said, you know, we're going into a direct storm.
I have been.
You
in a storm
might
at sea.
want to just stay below deck. Well,
Yeah.
of course, you don't tell me that.
I did the same thing.
And it's like, hey, hun, let's go topside. And it's like, 10 o'clock at night. Honestly, in my thoughts, it's like, how bad can it be? And I really wanted to, it was like the first night I think we were out. And I'm thinking, man, we're out here on the ocean, the beautiful moon, the night. And it's just very relaxing. You're going to have the wind. We tried to get out of the door.
Yeah.
The wind was blowing so hard. The rain seriously felt like people were throwing shards of glass at us.
We went on a cruise, and there was a storm that came in, and we stood out on the out, like the railing deck.
We made it. We made it up there. Yes.
And we watched it, and when it hit,
I thought our clothes were going to rip off of
They
us.
were like, "Oh, you guys need to come back, go inside." And we couldn't open the door. Like there was a guy on the inside that had to push it while we pulled it.
I pushed seriously with all of my might, my shoulder, my entire weight to get the door open for us to go out. And my wife, bless her heart, she's like all of a foot shorter than I am anyhow. So, I mean, we went out, we grabbed the railing, as Bill was saying, and we looked out and there was just lightning. And I mean,
it's pretty crazy.
You saw these huge waves, and thank goodness we were on a huge cruise ship.
Yeah.
Because if you'd been on a small ship, those waves are much taller than any small ship.
The thing that I remember most is that I didn't get seasick, which I thought I would. I get motion sickness in the car if I'm like in the back seat. So I expected to get seasick. I didn't.
I did.
When we went to dinner when we went to dinner, we were in the dining area and had the portal, window deal. And I was like, oh, I'll watch out the window because that storm's still. And it was like the window would be totally clear. And then you would just see the horizon line go up the whole window and then come back down and then go. And that made me so sick watching. I couldn't do it.
I laid in bed that night, and all jokes aside, the shower curtain, just one of those shower curtains hung on a rail, would open and close. The ship was rocking that bad. I was so sick.
I didn't get, I got queasy watching that window, but I never got sick.
Then, on more of the dark note, I won't get into a lot of the details, but even more terrifying than that was I unfortunately have been present to find 3 people that are deceased at different times. One of them was my grandmother. The first one was a next door neighbor, and my dad and I were out mowing the front lawn of where we lived at that time. Very nice gentleman. His wife actually even used to like get me off the bus and stuff when I was a younger kid. I mean, we'd known the family for a long, long time. I just see Dad jumping off the riding lawnmower. I had the push mower and the weed eater. I was kind of doing the trimming. And the lawnmower's kind of goes off till it kills itself. And I see Dad running across the yard, up across the road, and I'm trying to follow. Where's Dad going? I thought, maybe run over a yellow jacket nest or what? The next door neighbor was out doing his chores, and he had like a little hobby farm, and he had pulled a fence gate, not a sturdy fence gate, but one of those that's literally just some wooden posts with some barbed wire. And apparently while he was opening it, he had a massive heart attack and pulled that on top of him and then started to convulse. He wrapped that around him. I ran across to try to help Dad. And I was a teenager. I was at least 14-ish, probably. That was the scariest thing I think I'd ever witnessed. We ended up losing him. He did not make it. You know, Dad tried to do mouth to mouth and everything, but to try to get him out of the barbed wire and stuff was just very, very traumatizing. That is probably the first time I experienced true fear, and a level that no one should ever have to experience. But again, thank goodness I wasn't a young child, but I still was, you know, a young teen.
Yeah.
But I never, ever will forget that. That was horrific. And like I said, unfortunately, at different times I have come across 3 bodies of people that have passed away, and each one of them takes a piece of you. It really does. I don't know how our first responders and, you know, hats off.
I have to say, luckily in my life, I have never been in that situation. Of course, the older I get, the more I figure that will happen eventually. I mean, if only because the people I know are getting older, and those experiences are bound to be there.
Yep.
I have been with people, you know, within days of them passing.
Right.
And, you know, my stepdad, after he had his heart attack, my mom, when she was passing away from cancer, but have never seen, you know, a person at that moment or found somebody that was, you know, passed.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what that's like. I mean, again, luckily, I've never had to do that. I've never been involved in that.
Well, sorry to take that to a dark place, but
that's
we talk about real fears.
I was like physically, I was thinking more like afraid for my life kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I could definitely have talked about when my daughter was in the hospital and the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. And I mean, you talk about terror.
So many, it's like a Rubik's Cube of fear. I mean, there's so many different levels and twists and turns. It's, there's a lot of things we should be afraid of.
Even leaving the house today, my wife started painting the outside of our house this week. And so after work, I've gone out for an hour or two and we've been working on it. And we're to the point where we've done everything we can do that we can reach by hand. So now it's ladder work.
Mm-hmm.
And even as I was leaving the house today, I knew my son's going to work. I'm going to be here recording with you. I was like, you're not going to be climbing up trying to paint anything after we leave, are you? Not that I think my wife is infirm or anything, but it's hot outside and she's on a ladder. And if something happens and she falls, there's nobody there.
Yep.
I was like, please don't. And she's like, no, I'm just going to do this trim stuff and then I'm going in. I'm like, okay, good.
Again, as adults, there's just so many levels of fear and worry and fret and stress.
You just don't, I don't know how any person just doesn't spend their entire life almost frozen with anxiety.
I think the truth of the matter, you just can't stop to think about it.
Maybe it's because it's me and I'm broken inside for some reason. I don't know. Here's the thing. I really hope nobody lives the way I do, because it's awful to live with this kind of anxiety all the time. I go through phases where I am just so broken. I don't know. I don't even know the right word. Like, I just don't interact with people. I have almost stopped doing this podcast because I'm just like,
anxiety.
Yeah, like the anxiety of like, oh, I don't have time to do this, that, and blah, 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 blah. I do, but I am literally the kind of person that will put off doing something because I'm so anxious about not getting it done.
Much easier to say, I just don't have time. Make excuses.
I know my son does to a degree. Him and I have had these conversations, and I know that he has gotten some help for it. I just don't. Even going and getting help, I can't afford doctor bills.
Right.
Like,
well, and different people, obviously, different strokes for different folks. I have been approached by people, and it kind of slaps me back into reality. And I appreciate these people. They'll come up to me, and I guess I'll say stuff. I have, some might consider a little bit of a sadistic sense of humor, a weird twist.
No.
Yeah. And looking back on it, that's probably just my deal to cope with,
Oh, my humor
Stuff.
is definitely my way of coping.
you know.
I will say that I sit here and I stress about first world problems. I am worried about this, that, or the other. We talked about it, I think, in the last episode about fears. There is a very real difference between worrying how to pay your cell phone bill versus worrying how to feed your kid.
Yes.
But I mean, some people's minds just don't draw the line, and I have been doing my job now, my new job, for 6 months. I've been there for 6 months.
Half a year already.
And
Wow.
I'm still waiting for them to figure out that I'm not the right guy for the job and they need to fire me. You know?
Bill, you
that's
don't
how
give
I
yourself
live.
credit. You don't give yourself enough credit.
I am almost always in a near panic state. And it is a very hard way to live.
You guys are learning a lot about our personal lives on this. Hopefully, it'll help some people out there.
I hope, I hope maybe if there's somebody out there who deals with this, maybe just knowing that you're not the only one who lives like that. Like, I don't know. I think we may have picked up some new listeners. Like I was telling Eric, our last episode, our episode about the Goat Man, I should say, got 90, almost 100 downloads in the first week, which would be the most downloads we've ever gotten in a first week.
And at this point, I think we mentioned a local newspaper was coming to do an interview with us. They have come.
At this
and
point,
that's been published.
We've done
and,
that.
we might have got a few new listeners off of that, so very much appreciate that. Well, we hope that you've enjoyed installment number 2. Things to be afraid of as youngsters, things to laugh at that we were told to be afraid, all the way to the down and dirty details of Bill and Eric and what we live with every day.
A broken psychology.
Hopefully, some of you out there at least will be able to relate. Some of it, maybe you found humor in it. There's a lot to be afraid of out there. A lot of it, I think, we imagine, and there's absolutely nothing to be afraid of, to things that, quite honestly, we probably don't think enough about that we should be more afraid of. But that's where you'll find, right in the middle, somewhere in between, Nightmares on the Lost Highway. Thanks for listening.
Hey, real quick, call to action. I think Eric would agree. We'd like to grow this Nightmares on the Lost Highway.
Absolutely.
If you could, if you're listening on Apple, if you would go and give us a review and rate us. If you have some feedback, that's fine too. Whatever platform you're listening, follow us, rate us, give us some reviews. That helps get some recognition and gets our name out there.
We do have a Facebook page, Nightmares on the Lost Highway. You can easily find us if you want to communicate with us. If you want to share some possibilities for future podcasts with us, reach out. We want to talk with you guys.
I want to take a time to thank the people that helped bring this all together. Alex Tudor, you can almost call him our producer at this point. Sarah Tudor, who also helps with some of the technical stuff. I want to take a moment to extend thanks to Eric for letting us use his space to record in, kind of our makeshift studio.
I, in turn, would like to thank Bill for, one, putting up with me and using this camaraderie to do something we both very much love and enjoy doing, and thank Bill's family for allowing him to spend all the time to work and clean up our recordings and present them in what you hear in the final terms, the final edition, if you will.
And I'd like to thank all of you for continuing to listen. I know we've got some loyal followers out there. We do this as a labor of love, but we're happy that there are people that enjoy it hopefully as much as we do.
Thank you very much.